And I was seized by this fear that maybe I had died in my sleep and that everything afterwards, that my dream was actually my experience of dying. And that everything afterwards was a dying hallucination and I still don't know it.
Including right now.
Including right now. No idea,
Right.
yeah.
And so
the fact that this show exists might make you think that I'm probably dead. How the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, right, yeah.
We know of new methods of attack.
Wait,
No.
you don't drink at all?
No,
The
I haven't
Trojan horse.
had anything to drink in 10 years.
The fifth
Oh,
column.
so you're like off the stuff.
I just wanted to, yeah, a little bit. I mean, I had to stop. I had atrial fibrillation, and the doctor said, which is associated with endurance sports, right? So doctor said drinking could trigger it, try not drinking. So I did, and it didn't do anything, but I loved the way I felt.
Really?
So I just kept not drinking. I was like, I can always start again if I want to, but I might as well, while I'm on a roll, I might as well keep not drinking. And so I love the way I feel.
Yeah, people tell me that, but you get so used to feeling like shit that it seems normal. So apparently you can feel better than this.
Should we get started?
Yeah,
Yeah, are we recording? We are.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Good? All right,
Okay.
let's just get into it.
We usually have a rolling start with these.
Yeah, we
So
just
it just kind
go.
of comes together, and then at some point in the conversation, we
cold
introduce
open.
You
you.
coalesce into it.
Yeah.
But I had a wonderful experience flying over here. I just came in from San Francisco about an hour and a half ago, and I'm riding over on the plane, and I'm listening to Love Supreme, and I am powering my way through your book. And by powering, I mean like
makes it sound
reading
like an
and
effort.
rereading.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I am actually reading and rereading and pondering and contemplating and violently agreeing and intermittently like weeping, thinking about my children and how like wonderful the prose is.
Did the water come out? of
Yeah.
the
Oh,
eyes?
yeah. I mean, this is routine for me. It's just kind
you're
of
flying.
Yeah,
You're
by the way,
flying too.
me too.
Yeah.
On the subway.
Yeah.
This motherfucker made me cry on the subway.
Wow, I'm
Yeah.
honored. I got 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I
You,
got 2 out of
sir?
3.
Well, he's
I haven't been in a plane.
Yeah.
he's heartless.
Man, he's a heartless
I only now
monster.
started drinking, so let's check
No,
in
it's
60
just
minutes.
honestly, in the book, show the people the cover so they can say this is the book we're talking about. Your latest book. Everyone's got a copy except for me. Mine's covered in tears. I can't actually open it anymore.
For the people listening and not watching, it's In My Time of Dying, how I came face to face with the idea of an afterlife.
Yeah.
Pretty woo-woo setting there. Mr. Hard-Bitten.
Well,
foreign
yeah,
correspondent.
and we'll talk about this. I love the idea of your mother and your father, her being like Mrs. Woo Woo and spirits and feelings, and your dad being the rationalist and scientist. No, it was the mention of your children.
Yeah.
Because you're an older dad.
Yep.
Right? Are these your first kids?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
how old are they now?
8 and 5.
8 and
Holy
5.
cow, man.
and
So
you're
they're-
62?
I'm 63.
63.
Yeah, so I was 55 when my first daughter was born.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was 3, and my little girl was 6 months old. And I use pseudonyms in the book, by the way.
Yeah.
So my younger daughter was 6 months old when I almost died. So I just slid into home base, personally speaking. Right, a great relationship, wonderful marriage, these amazing children. I'd made it. Right,
Pretty successful career.
successful career.
A little bit.
But that was, that was in a weird way. That was, I don't want to sound arrogant, but for me, that was not the hard part. The hard part was making a personal life work.
Yeah.
And I just, it just didn't work. Right. And I didn't have a family. And that really was a heartbreaker for me. And at the bottom of the 9th, right?
Yeah. You got picked off.
Yeah.
Almost got picked off.
Yeah, I almost got picked up. And I was the happiest I could imagine being. Not only the happiest I ever was, the happiest I could imagine being, right? And then boom, I don't want to mean to rush ahead, but then boom, in mid-sentence, I felt a weird pain in my abdomen and I was dying. And it was that out of the blue, right? With no warning, no nothing.
Except for the 6 months that you ignored the symptoms and thought you could tough through it.
We all do that.
Yeah, but
That's you are a male of the species after all.
Intermittent pain in your abdomen can be a million things, including indigestion, right? So it wasn't like I was ignoring something that could easily have been benign, and it wasn't a level of pain that was unbearable. Kidney stones are unbearable, right? I'm not going to ignore that, right? And so I could just about sort of decide, no, don't worry about it, it's fine. And it wasn't fine. So the takeaway for me was the thing that might kill you might have be associated with a level of pain that's completely tolerable.
Yeah.
Like completely, right? And that I didn't know. I thought, if something hurts because you're going to be dying soon, it will be unbearable pain. Not true. And you have any new unexplained pain in midlife, you have to go right to the doctor.
You say, when you're doubled over in pain and about to sling your arm over your wife, that the famous stat that married men live longer than, I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
That's a famous. Did you know this, that married men live longer than?
Of course.
You did?
We're dumbass.
Well taken care of.
Oh, is that? Because
Yeah.
it makes sense, but I was unaware of this.
Are you guys married or not married?
I am very
Well,
married.
Things happen. But I wonder actually about that. You said you had everything. The career was great, and that was the final piece of the puzzle that was difficult to put together. And I look at your career, and it's like, you got to stop going to Afghanistan so much is what I'm thinking in like maybe 2007.
Right.
Is that the kind of the reason that from your career and what you were doing, and you were on the road and you're in war zones all the time, and you dedicate the book to Tim Hetherington, who was killed in Libya, great documentary and all that. Is that the reason where everything is not coming together because you're just out there in crazy places doing?
Not really. I mean, I was married once before, and we didn't have kids, and the marriage fell apart in part because of the psychological consequences of a lot of combat and Tim dying. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And so my ex-wife and I are still really good friends. The marriage just didn't work, and I came stumbling out of that right in the wake of Tim's death, and I was really depressed. I didn't know I was depressed. I mean, I didn't know what was happening, but I felt like I was inside a kind of like bulletproof plexiglass bubble that I could be a foot away from someone I loved, but I couldn't hear them or touch them. Like I just couldn't get through the bubble. Like I was isolated in this thing, and it was a terrifying feeling. And I started to really actually worry about my safety, right? I mean, I'd never had these thoughts before. And it was classic trauma like reaction. The marriage ended and my life resumed wonderfully with another person and wound up with children. And so I really feel like it could have ended badly in so many ways, and it didn't. It ended wonderfully. And I just didn't know that the universe could just take you out like that without any warning, and being in good health, right? I mean, it's not like I'm walking heart attack. I'm an athlete. I'm healthy. It just never occurred to me that I'd go to the hospital in an ambulance, unless it's a car accident or a chainsaw accident, right?
Yeah.
But indeed, any of us at any moment could suddenly feel a pain in their abdomen, and you have an hour to live.
But at the same time, I mean, you talk about this at the beginning of the book, is that you're in Afghanistan and you feel sort of sand moving behind you, and you hear the ringing out of the shot,
the crack of the bullet,
3, 4, 5 seconds later. That your life is in a place where it could end in an instant a lot.
Yeah, but I was in the casino then.
Yeah,
I went to the casino to make in money, and I was going to wager
You know you can lose it all,
$100. I'm like, I hope I don't lose it, right? But I might come back with 1,000. But I was in a casino. You're not in a casino in that sense when you're at home with your family.
That's an interesting thing to make some money in the casino. Sure, that's part of it. But there was a couple of other things that are part of that too. And one of the many interesting things about this book reminds me, even though I haven't read it in like 40 years, but the occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. It's like, right? Yeah. You come to realize a guy's life is flashing in front of his eyes as he is on the verge of dying. I forget the circumstances. Maybe he's being lynched or something or whatever. But we get little like, now we're in your life when you're 20 and you're like just bizarrely almost going into the Saharan desert for 6 months with a bunch of camel people. Like you've done a lot of weird shit. It possibly speaks to something else besides money, that you're putting yourself into a lot of like
I just
life-threatening things.
Of course, yeah, and thank you for letting me clarify that. I used money because the image was being in a casino.
Yeah.
I did not get into journalism for money.
No, I know. I totally know that. It weirdly worked, but like, that is obviously has to sort of like be something that you're processing with this, because you put yourself in dangerous situations all the time.
But that's the wager. Like, I'm going to put myself in a dangerous situation. I'm going to get something out of it, something ephemeral, something intrinsic to who I am, some insight into the world and myself, whatever, a sense of identity, sense of like I'm a man now, whatever it is, right? And but then you have the idea that when you come back, you're no longer gambling with your life. I'm not in Afghanistan anymore. I'm back home. No one's gambling anywhere. No one's rolling any dice. Here I am, my child on my lap. And the scary thing about death for me is that I realize it's not necessarily dramatic. It can be extremely mundane. It doesn't have to be a mortar impact. It literally can be a sort of strange feeling in your abdomen, and you don't know it, but a artery just ruptured and you're bleeding out and you have an hour to go.
And you almost died because you were in search of peace in a way. I mean, you mentioned, and I'm from Massachusetts, so when I think Truro, I'm like, where the fuck is the closest hospital? It's in Hyannis, right? I mean, it's an hour away, and as you point out, there's one other place in Massachusetts that has a further distance between it and a hospital. In search of that kind of tranquility, the doctors say you're, 15 minutes from death if you had been 10, 15 minutes later?
Yeah, 10 or 15 minutes, yeah.
That's astonishing.
Yeah.
I mean,
listen, some people bleed faster, and I mean, I would have, different kinds of ruptures, and I would have been dead before the ambulance got there, right? I mean, you have an aortic, if you rupture your aorta, and you got a minute, So I hung on. I lost half my blood, 2/3 of my blood. I hung on for an hour and a half. I was in end stage hemorrhagic shock when they finally got me to the hospital. I had, 10 minutes, and they caught me right before I went over the edge, right? But a little bit of traffic, anything, just random. Had the ambulance been on another call, right? And whatever. This is totally random. That's what I realized, and I realized that in combat too. It's random. It's all random. It has zero meaning.
Mm-hmm. Right? And that's when you get to the Werner Herzog thing, like, the nature is indifferent to your existence. How do you avoid that kind of sense of nullification? You quote your daughter spectacularly as, like sort of her 2-year-old philosophy, kind of explaining it to you. But I got a sense reading between the lines here that it did kind of send you to some dark thoughts afterwards, not like dark self-harm thoughts, but just like what the fuck kind of thoughts.
Oh yeah, it completely messed me up. It gave me the idea that I could die. Almost died randomly on one day, so I could die on another day, and that every day and every moment might be my last, and that's true for everybody all the time. And I hadn't quite registered that, right? So what do you do with that? It's either annihilating or it's intoxicating. Oh, this is all the only thing I know I'm going to get is this moment. Well, let's do it. Let's really do it, right? Because if you think you're somehow owed a little more time, even another day, you're at risk of not actually focusing on the only thing you do get, which is right now. There is no past, there is no future that you know about. All any of us ever get is right now. And if you can put yourself in that moment, like life becomes a bit of a vision, right? It's extraordinary.
Why do you think it took so long for you to come to that realization, especially given the number of other circumstances you found yourself in, the fact that your father had passed and you've seen and lost other people?
It takes a long time to believe you're going to die. To really believe it, intellectually, we all know, right? But to really believe it, right? And some people come up with the idea of an afterlife because they still can't deal with the idea that we're going to die, right? And so what happened with me was that, I knew that if I go into combat, I might get killed. So I've had bullets impact inches from my head and sandbags. I was blown up by an IED. The guy with the clacker was just a moment too fast, and he blew up the engine block instead of the crew compartment, right? Very, very small margins, right? But in my mind, I'm like, well, that's combat. And now I'm not in combat anymore because I'm done with it, so I'm good, right? And when your own body betrays you, and not because you smoked and drank your whole life and it finally just has given up, but your own body betrays you in a random way, right? That on a nice June afternoon in mid-sentence with your wife, like at that, and you're a healthy man, like if the universe works that way, then let's think about what life feels like right now, like because that we know we have. What's it feel like to have your daughter on your lap? Really feel like? Like what's, sometimes war reporters are like, well, life's so boring back home and the only place I feel alive is in the combat, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, if sitting in the park with your daughter doesn't make you feel alive, you got to go back to school. You got some work.
This is why these guys are blubbering. Like
it comes up a lot in the book. It's come up in just a few minutes here. kids. That's, I mean, how much of this in the way that you process this is informed by the fact that you have 2 young kids? I mean, when you had kids, I'm sure you were doing math in your head. Okay, so I've done this.
Yeah, of course.
Well, when she's this age, I'm going to be this age. I mean,
The math is terrifying.
the math is terrible. But it seems like the fact that you have 2 kids completely changed the way that you thought about all this stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I hadn't had kids, I mean, the real heartache for me when I woke up in the ICU and the nurse said, "Oh, you almost died last night." You know, I had no idea. I mean, dying people often don't know that they're dying, right? And I mean, it was shocking to me. And then, of course, I had memories of being on the threshold. They came back. We can talk about that. But the first thing I thought about was, oh, my God, my children almost lost their father.
Yeah, it's bad.
Right. I mean, and my wife, and it you know, you're as a father, as a parent, and I think particularly as a father, my core duty is to protect my family from harm, right? And dying on them is a grave form of harm, right? And what killed me was that I almost wasn't able to protect them from that. And had I died, it would have hurt them enormously, and I wouldn't have been around to protect them from anything else.
Yeah.
Right? And
They're different people if you die at that moment.
yeah. And it just, the idea that that they wouldn't have a father and a protector, and not only would I have incurred huge harm to them, grief, a lifetime of grief, at least for my older daughter, but then I'm not even around to protect them from anything else. I mean, I just it destroyed me.
Yeah.
Right? And what I noticed, I mean, one way to remove fear from yourself is to, I've seen this in combat a lot. If you're worried about yourself, combat's terrifying. If you're worried about someone else, combat is easy, right? And so one of the things in the platoon that I was with, one of the things I noticed, their big fear was that they were going to fail in their duties to one of their brothers, right? Someone gets shot, like someone's got to run out and drag him to safety, and you just seize up because you're too scared to go out there because the ground is moving from all the bullets, right? And so you, in those, they were so focused on the others that I don't think they had a huge sense of their own fear in those moments. And likewise with a parent, if you're in a situation that's dangerous and you're trying to protect your kids from a grizzly bear, you're not scared, right?
That grizzly bear's fucked.
Exactly. That was.
I mean,
me.
you're fucked, but you think the grizzly bear's fucked, right?
But it doesn't. You know, it's like the problem with dying right now is that I don't get to keep fighting this thing, right? You know, it's like that's the big problem with dying, right? And so there was an amazing expression in my previous book called Freedom. I was looking at how underdog groups managed to defeat larger, more powerful adversaries, right? And one of the examples I used were the Apache, who remained free, you know, almost until 1890, right? And they were incredible fighters. And one of the sayings in the Southwest during what was called the Indian Wars was, among the U.S. cavalry, was there's nothing so dangerous as a wounded Apache, because they will do anything to buy their little band time to escape the U.S. cavalry. They will do anything, right? They're infinitely brave. And so that is what being a parent feels like. And that was me in that moment. I was like, oh my God.
It's funny because it's never really considered in war until after the fact when people write about it. People didn't say that when the Soviets invaded Finland. They didn't say that when the Russians invaded Ukraine. In the moment, we can say it now, is that these people are fighting for something that the other person has no idea what they're fighting for. It's the Vietnamese in Vietnam too.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that parallel to your kids, I mean, you'll do anything. And I mean, the memories that you have that you so brilliantly write about of getting from Truro. And by the way, it's good that it was June, because it was July, Route 6.
Yeah, I'd have died.
You're dead. I'm sorry. It's just you're a dead man driving that one. There's one highway basically that goes. Not highway is a bit of an overstatement, that goes through
Two-lane
Cape
road,
Cod,
yeah.
2-lane road, and July and August, UK. It's very hard to get through.
Did we blame Andrew Sullivan somehow?
Of course. It's always him. Yes. But that, I mean, when you're like remembering those things, I mean, how are you kind of as a writer and as a journalist separating what you do remember in what is kind of an implanted memory after the fact. You come through and you're like, they said you almost died. You're like, fuck. What of that is real to you? Do you have any sense of how one disaggregates that stuff?
Isn't it all kind of real?
Yeah, I mean,
not necessarily. I mean, it's just like, my daughter has memories of things that I realize she remembers from a photograph.
Yes.
But she saw the photo. I'm like, you don't actually remember that. And she's like, no.
But this is how recollection works. Right. Like we remember remembering things. We don't actually remember the things.
Right.
In which case we enrich them and change them over time.
So how did you approach that? Knowing all that as a great
So the thing is,
journalist?
I have memories because I was, I'm not a child, so I was conscious during this whole. They couldn't knock me out because my vital signs were so low.
Yeah.
They couldn't give me any nice drugs, right? So I was conscious the whole time and in unbelievable pain, right? And when they're working on me, obviously if they'd actually operated, they would have put me under. But they were using interventional radiology, so they punched a hole in my groin and slid a catheter up through my arterial system and a wire and snaked it around and got it to the rupture in my pancreatic artery. And but I went through all of that, without anything, basically without anything, and conscious. And so one of my most searing memories, it was my puzzlement. I didn't know I was dying, and I didn't understand why the doctors all look so worried. They just look stricken. I was like, Jesus, cheer up, guys! Like, what's going on? And I tried joking with them, and they wouldn't laugh. And I was like, damn, this is a tough crowd, right? And apparently, dying people try to joke a lot with the doctors.
That's great.
Because they're worried. I think they're just worried. Like, why are you all so serious?
Trying to lighten the mood.
That's right. So
It also helps the doctors, a little bit, I would imagine.
that's right. So the as I was dying, and now actively dying, right? And they're trying to get a large gauge needle through my neck into my jugular to put a IV line in there to transfuse me. I needed 10 units of blood, right? It's a whole oil change, right? That's all the blood you have, right? And while they were doing that, this black pit opened up underneath me, right? And I was getting pulled into it, and I was terrified of it. And I didn't know I was dying, but I knew that if I went into the infinitely dark abyss, I'm not coming back. I just sensed like a wounded coyote, like, don't go in there because you're not coming back. And I was terrified. And then I just have to pause and say, I'm an atheist. I'm still an atheist. My father was a physicist, a lifelong atheist. And to my shock, above me, to my left,
Where Camille is now.
It's your father.
was my dead father.
Yeah.
Inviting me to join him, right? And I was horrified. I'm like, join.
What a dick.
Right? I'm like,
Dude, Dad, give me, I can fight here.
Yeah, you're dead. I mean, you're dead. Why would I go with you? Right? Like, I was really kind of offended, right? It's like, and I said to the doctor, you have to hurry. I'm going. You're losing me, right? I didn't know where they were losing me to, but if my father was bringing me anywhere, that was a bad sign, right? And then later in the interventional radiology suite, I watched the doctors give up because they couldn't get the catheter to the rupture. And I watched them say, well, we did everything we could. And I couldn't believe what I heard, right? And then one of them said, let's go through his left wrist. So all of those were
left wrist to the pancreas. Just one.
So you
the
can
visual.
You could go. Yeah, you can go through your right groin, up your arterial system, or through the left wrist to get down through the celiac. I think to your pancreas, whatever it is.
I want to just intersperse for the listeners and viewers at home that your description of what the body goes through in those situations. There's a very kind of clinical and precise way of describing all of that, and then also like how the catheters work, and it's terrific. It gets you there and it makes you understand the different stages of death as it's about to happen, and in this case did not.
I loved this book. I hated reading it.
I
was so terrifying.
I had some serious panic issues, which we might get into.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, because he fucking leads with drowning. Have you ever almost drowned? It really sucks. You don't want to read about it again.
This man has almost drowned.
You do not want to fucking read about it again.
I've spent so much of the last like 2 or 3 years like reading and rereading like all of my favorite Cormac McCarthy books, which is to say like pretty much all of them. And I feel like I've been steeped in a lot of this sort of stuff, just the persistent existential dread. Like this thing Heidegger talks about. And I get this sense of Heidegger as I'm reading your work, which I know you're a fan of Cormac McCarthy's, and I know he drew from Heidegger as well. So it's in there in some way, but he has this thing called being towards death. And I think there's a very real sense in which I've just kind of found myself in a place where I'm constantly aware of my mortality and the circumstance that in any given moment, like this might be it, this might be all you have, which makes me both exceptionally attentive in the places that I find myself. But it can also just be somewhat difficult to carry at times. I found there was a moment I had this weekend, actually. My wife took my daughter and they went on a girls' weekend and they stayed in the city for a couple nights. And me and Cohen, my youngest, stayed home. And at some point in the evening, I'd put him down to bed and I'm just kind of laying in the bed and I'm thinking about the strangeness of being and how bizarre and mysterious the cosmos is and how odd it is that anything exists. And I found myself getting slightly sad, like just a little sad, like a little depressed maybe. And I heard this voice like, call me. And it's Cohen. And he just kind of comes into the room and he wants to get into the bed with me because he misses mama. And he's actually saying something about Halloween. He's got weird nightmares about bubbles floating and zombies, well, whatever. But he climbs into the bed with me. And I thought about that moment as I was reading your book today, specifically this moment with the co-sleeping where your daughter's in bed with you and you kind of put your arm around her. And there's something about this conversation we've been having about, I suppose, just men in general and the kind of duties that they have with military and combat stuff, but also fathers who similarly put themselves on the line and imagine themselves as not only the providers, but the protectors. And there's just something about the recognition of that role and how the role of father like makes it so much easier to deal with the bizarre existential craziness of a circumstance that makes one feel like immediately not quite at peace and sort of awkward in any given moment, but at the same time having just this profound clarity of purpose and a determination to be here and to be available and to be present. And there's no question in that. I suppose it's just something I wanted to get out into the ether because the conversation we're having is like four guys around a table who have offspring who are contemplating these eternal, ethereal questions and at the same time like contemplating like the duties that we have to our families.
There's an amazing film called Force Majeure. Have you guys seen that?
Swedish movie, yeah.
It's incredible. And the father of this family in one moment, and this is the thing that I think...
It's the skiing holiday movie, right?
And there's an avalanche that looks like it's going to hit the chalet where they're having, whatever, on the deck. And he grabs
runs away.
Sorry about that.
You're making us a little bit worried.
Right.
Yeah, we actually got one double parked outside.
Right.
Very close hospital. It's fun.
No, as the sort of like snow comes, as the avalanche comes, he grabs in one moment of pain, he grabs his phone, leaves his family, and dives through the door into that chalet. Mm-hmm. The marriage doesn't last a week.
Mm-hmm. No,
it's over within a week.
Yeah, that's great.
You left your wife and children, and you grabbed your phone, you're done. Like it was amazing film.
It's they did a very bad remake of it, by the way, with Will Farrell.
Will
Farrell.
It's
terrible. Yeah. Who's the father in the movie? Am I
love
right
that
about
guy,
this,
but
right?
that's a terrible.
Right? I think he's great, but it's just not. It's not. But it's a very Swedish movie. You have two girls.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you have two girls. I have one girl. You have one girl. You have Cohen's the interrupter. He's the one that
which was very strange. When I found out I was having a girl, I was not immediately thrilled. Like I had all of the visions of a man who wants to have a boy who's strapping, and I didn't know how I'd relate to her. Of course, she arrives, and it is completely different. I fall madly in love with this person, and when I find out
the same thing.
we have another one coming, in my mind, it was just like, okay, so I'm going to have this just gaggle of women in the house, and it's going to be amazing. And I didn't have any expectations around like what it would be like to raise a son, but I see so much of myself in him. And I find that when we spend time together, I'm always like thinking about my own upbringing and both the fact that I had like my stepfather, who I only refer to as stepfather here for the purposes of making it literal. He's my dad. He was around from the time I was 2. and my biological father, who I had zero relationship with. I think we met 3 times in person over the course of my life that I can remember. And there was one more where he took me for ice cream. And apparently I called him ugly. That's all. That's what I was told about it. It's probably not true because we look a little bit alike. And he was a serial philanderer. You can't do that unless you have certain skills and abilities. I don't know why I started telling that story, actually.
But let it out, man. Let it out.
Listen,
man.
there is.
But I did want to ask something related to what we were talking about earlier with fathers. And there's a sense that I've had about like my own mortality, and yes, throwing myself on the grenade to protect my family. But my sense about like how sad I might be to be leaving my kids and putting them in a lurch has always been moderated by an appreciation for the fact that my wife is just the apogee of everyone's affection in the house. Yeah. Like the children depend on her in a different sort of way. I depend on her in a different sort of way. And if it had to be like minus one of us, it would be minus me. And I don't know if that's like
children do much better with the mom than the dad. I mean, there's a lot of data behind that, like the health outcomes, education, longevity, everything. So,
but you saw your dad when you found yourself in a difficult situation.
My mom was still alive. Yeah, I saw my dad.
But you also describe like the relationship with your father in the book as well. And he was someone who was often kind of distant.
Yeah. He was on the spectrum and very sweet man, but on the spectrum and very hard to reach. And he did not really understand human forms of communication. I mean, he just did not. He learned them by rote, but he did not feel them. He did not understand them.
I mean, you can spend 30 seconds and give a Wikipedia description of your father's life because it's pretty fucking crazy. It's really, really interesting. And he ends up, and you weave this in the book really wonderfully, like in the kind of creation of 20th century physics, kind of in the middle of those kind of conversations. But his personal life to get there was arduous.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like many people, he and his family fled Europe during World War II. I mean, his father was Jewish. His mom was a Gentile, she was Austrian Catholic, which was a rare thing in 1920 when they got married. And so my father was their first child and born in 1923 in Germany. His dad was a journalist and he was posted to Dresden. And so my father grew up speaking German. And in 1933, they left because of what was starting to happen in Germany. And they went to Spain. And they were there for a few years. And then the fascists came into Spain in 1936 under Franco. Yeah. And then they went to Paris. And then, of course, the Germans came in and they went to Portugal. So at each stop, he learned the language fluently. So because of the fascists, right, and I hope I say that word with enough disdain and bitterness. Yeah. Because of the fascists, he spoke 5 languages fluently, right?
Ideological Duolingo. He figured out all
exactly. Yeah. And eventually he came to America on a cork freighter named the São Tomé that came into port in Baltimore. And the immigration official said, "What he was 18." And he said, what are you going to do in America, son? And he said, I want to be a physicist. And he said, the immigration official said, my son's at MIT. You have to go to MIT. It's the best university in the country. And off he went to MIT.
I mean, that's pretty great. If we're being totally honest about it.
Thankfully for the fascists that we got all the great Jewish physicists and
totally.
scientists.
Totally, absolutely.
It's like, guys, you realize how dumb this ideology is?
Yeah.
You mentioned something about your father's ethnicity and him essentially not having one, but keeping the middle name in order to out racism.
There was a lot of anti-Semitism in America at that time. And he never thought
it's back, baby.
No, he was secular, right? Like whatever. He just didn't think twice about it. And he got to America and he'd never experienced anti-Semitism before. And he couldn't believe it. So he his middle name was Shapiro. And so he put his middle name in order to smoke out the racists, right? In order to find out who was an anti-Semite and who wasn't. And it worked. And then, so that was his way of like finding out like, who can I trust, who can I trust, like, and defending all the right people.
Sebastian Junger doesn't sound necessary. I mean, the most famous German writer who was kind of slightly pro-fascist was Ernst Junger, who wrote Storm of Steel and stuff. But so then you grow up, of course, in Massachusetts. Yeah. You grew up in Belmont. in one of the, I want to ask you a little bit about the book that makes your career and what that did for your career and how it changed your life and it made other people's careers in a film sense too, right? I mean, that was Mark Wahlberg who was
I didn't make Wahlberg's career.
Wait, he wasn't but he that was
Made
that
him
his
an
first
actor.
film? Was one of his first big films?
Maybe one of his first big films. I don't. I
was
think
a
he was
rapper
probably
before. That's right.
He was headed somewhere anyway. But yeah. But thank you. I appreciate
No,
it.
I remember
helpful
being
to
in the
him.
Crow's Nest in that bar.
Yeah.
Drinking one, and that the woman who is a character in the book is a long time ago.
Ethel,
talking about you and you coming down there, and it was. I mean, that was not many writers get to that level. I mean, that book sold how many millions of copies?
Lots of copies.
Lots of copies.
Yeah.
That's somebody who made a lot of money off of books. I don't know, lots of copies. Just lots of copies. And then the film happens, and that is a mega hit on two levels. The film adaptations, they buy the rights, they don't make it, or they do and they make a shitty version of it. That's a huge film. How does that change like your life at that point? That's what year? 90-something?
The book came out in 97.
97.
And, I really wanted to be a foreign reporter, right?
Yeah.
So I'd been in Sarajevo in 93. I came back to write, I wrote a book proposal and I had an agent who for some reason was handling my work, right? And sent off this book proposal for a book about a storm. And I was in Sarajevo, Zagreb and Sarajevo split, and all over northern central Bosnia. And I got a fax like to the hotel saying, you have to come home. I sold your book. Wow. I sold your stupid book for almost nothing, right? So I was really bummed because I was wanting to be a war reporter, right? And so I went home and I was like, all right, I'm gonna dash this thing off. It took 3 years, right? But and I became very proud of it. But my interest was not actually in being an author. And then I turned it in. And back then you took the subway up to 42nd Street, and if you were published by W.W. Norton, you walked in with, the 300 pages in a, printer paper box and put it on your editor's desk. Like that's how you turned a book in back then, right? So I did that, and the next morning I was on a plane to Afghanistan, to Delhi and Kashmir and Afghanistan. The Taliban were taking over Afghanistan. It was 1996. Wow. And so I was in Afghanistan in the summer of 96. I went right back to foreign reporting as soon as I could.
Wait, were you just a freelancer at that point?
Yeah.
So you're just going on your own dime.
I got a magazine assignment to write about the rise of terrorist cells, terrorist networks in Afghanistan. And in Tora Bora. I mean, Bin Laden, right? Al-Qaeda, right? So that was where so as the book came out, and as soon as I could, there was a sort of war bubbling up in Kosovo. As soon as I could in 98, I went, 6 months after the book came out, I went to Kosovo to cover the start of the war in Kosovo. But, when the book came out, I was a climber for tree companies for a long time. Like that's how I made my money when I was writing the book. And I did the aerial work for tree companies. So I had a job. I lived in like a one bedroom in the Lower East Side, and I slept next to my chainsaw. Like I had a job doing tree work in north of New York City, and I had a pickup truck. And twice a week I'd drive up to, do some tree work, right? And this is in 97 when the book came out. So, no one had cell phones. I had voicemail, right? And suddenly the book came out, and it started going crazy. And I was getting all these messages left on my voicemail, and I have to dial in on a payphone, right, and do the code, and then it would give me my messages. And I'd be there at a payphone. I'd be doing tree jobs. I'd be there at the payphone, covered in sawdust, writing down NBC wants you to call the because my book was immediately a bestseller, and then I would call my agent and give him the information. And so I was both a tree worker and a best-selling author for like a brief while until I had to stop doing the tree work. And then, but before I quit, we had a job in Poughkeepsie. It's taking down a big black locust. And so I climbed this thing, and the woman was home, the mom, housewife, whatever, was home, was sort of watching through the kitchen window, right? And I sort of took this tree down, and I finished a big nasty tree. And so she came out to say thank you so much. That was interesting to watch, blah, blah. And she kept staring at me, and she said, it's amazing. You look exactly like this author that I'm reading so I'm reading right now. He wrote this book called The Perfect Storm. It just came out. It's an amazing book, and you look just like him. And I was like, well, it's because I am him. And she's like, almost fell over. Like, it's very funny.
Weird dogleg of a question. You were in Sarajevo in the early 90s.
93, 94.
So you know my friend Joel Brand. You know my friend probably Laura Pitter. You probably ran into Samantha Power at some point in that period of time. That generation, I'm a little bit younger than you. I turned 21 in 1989. And there's a lot of journalists who I know who that was the first stringer war. Like everyone was a stringer.
Yeah, that's right.
And like you had 4 different strings. Like I'm gonna do Times London here, and I'll do like Newsweek over here. So stringer war. So you had to have balls to like take the airport road and all that stuff in Sarajevo. But a lot of the people who were either stringing or even like sort of thinking about and conceptualizing the war at that time were thinking about it in terms, and Samantha Power is kind of explicit in this in some of her books, like thinking like this is our Spanish Civil War moment.
Yeah.
Like, because the world was fucking up. They were standing by, not doing anything while they're just snipers picking off grandmas, like in a cosmopolitan city. It beggars belief that happened. And so it felt very clarifying for a generation of people. You actually have connection to the Spanish. You're probably the only person I know who was there who has connection to the Spanish Civil War. Does that inform your thinking at all? Is there something about your dad's background in Spain? And you talk about that in a really interesting passage of being an absolute freak going up in the snow and almost killing yourself for no reason at all in the book. Does that inform your thinking in your foreign correspondence?
I was totally enamored of Spain when I was young and my 20s. And it also, my father and his family, he was 13 when they fled Spain when the fascists came in. He fled to the sound of bombs and machine gun fire, right? And, of course, they fled France when the Germans went in. And it made me very curious about war, right? And the idealism of the Spanish Civil War, the idea that there's fascism and that there are good people and brave people who will stop that nonsense, who will risk their lives and give their lives to stop that nonsense was incredibly inspiring to me. And it did get replayed, in a kind of simplistic way. The Bosnians weren't perfect. But, basically, you could see the same paradigm at work. Like this is a civilian population that's fighting for their freedom, fighting to not be annihilated by fascists. And they fought very, very bravely. And this was a citizens' war. These are people like the 4 of us, right? Young people, 18-year-olds in trenches fighting to preserve their families and their lives and their city. And it worked. It did it. It was incredibly inspiring. But I think my taste for being inspired in that way very much came from my, hearing my father talk about it with Spain, for sure.
It's amazing that war, because I know you remember it very well. You were in Eastern Europe at the time, and so many people that were, these stringers in the stringer war. You do too. Almost completely forgotten about. Now that moment, the Spanish Civil War is probably better remembered now than the Balkan Wars. And that was your kind of trial by fire as a journalist, right? So then you go to Afghanistan like 5 years before 9/11. Right? Yeah.
And I had an assignment, which I couldn't believe that someone was actually sending me somewhere. Well, I didn't go with on my own dime with
Who was that for? Do you remember?
It was for Men's Journal, a magazine called Men's Journal. Remember Men's Journal?
Lab Mags.
That actually did reporting.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but I had a backpack with a sleeping bag in it and a manual typewriter and whatever, a few $1,000s in cash, and it was very simple, very, very simple.
And you've written recently an essay you wrote about journalism that, how skeptical you were of the Iraq War, so much so that you didn't even want to go cover it because you were so annoyed about the premise of it. But not so much, obviously, with Afghanistan. It was much clearer. Yeah. But then 20 years later, America's longest war, we pull out ignominiously. What do you think of it now as somebody who was there before the war in 96, spends a lot of time, you make the documentary, Restrepo, all this stuff that happens. When you look at that period for America, what is that? What is this sort of immediate response do you have? For 20 years of war, the number of people who died, that compared to a lot of fights, it's not that huge compared to Russia and Ukraine and stuff, but everything being a tragedy in that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So just the framework for this is every death is a tragedy.
Yeah.
And there were fewer tragedies in Afghanistan than in Vietnam.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
Right. I mean, just to say it, right?
Yeah.
57,000
57,000
American
Vietnam,
casualties, right? And Korea, I don't know what it was more than that.
It was 100 and something thousand. Yeah.
Right. And then World War II, let's not even talk about it, right? So yeah, it was a 20-year war, but that's not the only metric to measure where it ranks.
Sure, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that, I mean, if you want a quick evaluation of the war, 9/11 really did happen, right? And it was planned and executed by people who had safe haven in Afghanistan because it was a failed state, right? And we were not, and I think we had the legal and moral right to go after bin Laden after what happened, right? And we were not going to do that. We were not going to do that by flying SEAL Team 6 from Northern Virginia, right? It's not happening. We had to be in Afghanistan to get those people. And we also, and we did, we decimated al-Qaeda, right? And we did it because we were in Afghanistan. The other premise here was that they were there in the first place because it was a failed state. So let's stand up a democracy so that it's not vulnerable to this happening all over again. So we're not on some 30-year cycle, right? And that was a noble idea. And I think even had some, a lot of merit. But we did it so badly. Every administration made unforgivable errors, right? Tactical errors, strategic errors, moral errors, like Democrats and Republicans alike, they all fucked it up, right? So when we're evaluating the war—
It's 4 administrations.
Yeah, when we're evaluating the war—
Crazy.
you can't just say, well, we shouldn't have been there because we had the lead. It's tempting to say that. But what my response is, we shouldn't have been there if we weren't going to do it right. And we had the ability to do it right, and George Bush chose not to, and he rode off to Iraq to a failed enterprise that had absolutely did not need to happen, and killed the majority of the casualties in the war on terror were killed in Iraq, a war that didn't need to happen. And so that would be my response.
So you
to
think
that.
it could have?
Oh,
We
yeah.
could have built that nation.
I mean, look, I was there in 2000 with Massoud, right, in the north, in Badakhshan. He was surrounded, outnumbered 3-1. He was such a sort of chess genius.
And he got killed on September 9th or something?
September 9th. He was
Yeah.
killed as part of the 9/11 plot, right?
Correct, yeah.
So I was with him for 2 months there, right, in very intense combat. After he was killed, after 9/11, I rushed back there. I was with his commanders that I'd known from the fall of 2000 when they took Kabul. Right. And, the Afghans took Kabul. The Americans didn't take Kabul. The Afghans took Kabul.
It was the Northern Alliance, as we called
Northern
it
Alliance.
at the time,
And they liberated Kabul. I mean, the joy in the street was extraordinary, right?
Shaving their beards.
Yeah. I mean, they were dancing in the streets and flying kites and playing radios, and the joy was amazing, right? And I was getting hugged in the streets of Kabul because when people found out I was American, they would come up and hug me. It was amazing, right? And so that was squandered. Right, and I mean the Afghans were sick of the Taliban, and we had to do this sort of minimum, and it would have worked, and we didn't even do the minimum. And I can go into the details if you want, but basically, like, we had the goodwill of the Afghan people, the majority of the Afghan people. We had the support of the world. Like, virtually every country in the world acknowledged our right to go in there and fix what happened, and we still blew it. It was amazing.
And from your perspective, after the Bush administration screwed things up, like, why couldn't anyone else get it back on track?
Because they could have, they just didn't because they were stupid, right?
So what does that sequence of bipartisan, multi-administration failure say about military interventions of that sort?
I mean, it says a lot about stupid strategies, right? But the Afghans, you had a willing population that was dying for stabilization, right? And what the Americans came in, and we tried to do it on the cheap because Bush wanted to go to Iraq. So he left 15,000 troops in Afghanistan. I mean, think about how big and rugged and weird and complex Afghanistan is. 15,000. You know how many cops there are in New York City? 40,000, right? 15,000 troops in Afghanistan, and they tried to basically do this by paying their way to victory. So they're buying off warlords right and left. They were paying off Taliban commanders. I mean, they were giving money to the Taliban, right? And one of the reasons the Taliban came in the first place was because the Afghans were tired of the corruption of the failed government that was there before. And I was there in 96. They were like, listen, we're going to let these guys in. I'd just been shot at by a Taliban gunner on the outskirts of Kabul in the summer of 1996. And the kid I was with was like, we hate those people, but we're going to let them in because we're tired of the corruption and the civil war. And so what we did is we went in and we supercharged the corruption with tens, hundreds of billions of dollars that were completely unmonitored. It was just, pay off money so that we wouldn't have to keep troops there, basically.
I mean, the stories I've heard from people who know both Afghanistan and Iraq of the bags full of cash are horrifying.
And we stood up a corrupt government. Look, I mean, Ashraf Ghani, our man in Kabul, when Kabul fell, when the Taliban took it, left in 2 Black Hawk helicopters. Were they Black Hawks? Maybe they weren't Black Hawks. In 2 helicopters with bags full of cash. He had something like $20 million in cash with him. No Democrat, no leader of any country that we have anything to do with that claims to be a democracy should be going anywhere with $20 million in cash. That's our money. It was our guy. It was the country we were supposed to help. And you know what? If I was Afghan, I would be like, you know what? You guys screwed this up. I don't like the Taliban, but it's better than you guys. I can imagine a perfectly good Afghan thinking that. I'm a perfectly decent person thinking that. We completely screwed it up. Yeah. And I brought it up with John Kerry at one point. He asked for a meeting with me to talk about Afghanistan. I'm like, this has been...
At what point?
Oh, it was during Obama. Like he was...
So Secretary of State point, not candidate point.
Yeah, that's right. And he... and I said, listen, you're never going to win this war if you continue if you continue turning a blind eye to the corruption that you yourself foster. You will never win the war because that's what the Afghans are upset about, and you will fail, right? He said, well, we can't afford to do that. I'm like, yes, you can. What do you mean? Why not? I said, because you can threaten to leave, and if we leave, Najibullah, the first guy that when Kabul was overrun in '92, in '94, Najibullah was hung from a light post by the Taliban, right? The totally corrupt leader of Afghanistan. So all you have to say is, listen, to Karzai, you're going to be the next Najibullah. We're leaving if you don't clean this show up, right? You do have leverage, and they just didn't want to deal with it.
At this point now, the Taliban's back in charge, and Karzai, whose brother, by the way, owned a restaurant in Baltimore and in Cambridge, right? It was Hamid Karzai's brother had an Afghan restaurant in Cambridge. But the corruption that you see there and this long, slow withdrawal to the kind of disaster of the final pullout is that, and then you look and you see members of jihadist groups from Syria playing basketball. You saw this yesterday, I'm sure. The current president of Syria, who is a former member of al-Nusra, who is now playing basketball. Right. And my friend Theo Padnos, who was kidnapped by them, he said, I knew those guys. And I see they're literally playing basketball with members of the American military going to the White House to meet. Look, fine if there's some...
How were the handles? How was that?
He was amazing. It was like hanging off the rim. Back, he was staring at James Worthy. But you see this shit, and then the Taliban stuff is that you always get that sense that the line, this is not the same Taliban that was shooting people in the back of the head in soccer stadiums.
It's reformed.
These are reformed. They're different. We can deal with them. As somebody who spent so long in Afghanistan and so much, do you get a sense that is true about the current iteration of the Taliban, or is it just meet this new boss same as the old boss?
I haven't been there under the Taliban regime, and Najibullah was killed in '96. So I was mixing the dates up. Yeah. I haven't been there since the Taliban took over, and I know people who have been. I just have to think that there would be press reports about those kinds of atrocities like there were in '94 and '95 when the Taliban took over. So,
hope so
I think
we've seen some of exexecutions and such.
Yeah, of course. But,
public executions.
Yeah, but I'm guessing it's not at the same level, partly because the Taliban know that they're making their lives very, very hard if they completely alienate the Western world, right? So I think they're being sort of smart about it, and I
want to get back to the book a little bit because you thread a needle, and Camille will understand this better than I will because he pays attention to this stuff. But you're talking about, you saw your father in a dark void over here.
Yeah.
And you also told your wife about that kind of immediately in the real time, and she replayed that back to you. So you have this thing, and this sort of impels you to start researching this and seeing what are common near-death experience things out there. And yet you're also knitting it with your father's look at physics and kind of what's happening at the subatomic level. It's maybe asking too much in a single question, but can you knit those together, or at least sort of like talk about what you learned when you started investigating other people talking about these near-death experiences, at least?
Yeah. So thank you. So the first thing, when my wife came into the ICU, the first thing I said to her was, I almost died last night and I saw my dead father. Like, it was the first thing, because I've doubted
Big news.
Yeah, I've doubted,
big news.
but I've doubted. You know, I'm a journalist and I'm a skeptic, and I sort of wondered, could I have just sort of cooked this up somehow? It was the first thing I said, right? And while I was, after the ICU nurse, I sort of woke up before my wife came in. I sort of woke up to this ICU nurse talking to another nurse, and I opened my eyes, and she said, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Junger. We almost lost you last night. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that you made it. No one can believe it." And then she walked out of the room. I'm like, "Are you kidding?" Like, I had no idea. I was in for belly pain. I mean, no idea, right? And she came back an hour later and said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Not so great. What you told me is terrifying, and I can't stop thinking about it." And she said, "Try this. Instead of thinking about it like something scary, try thinking about it like something sacred." And then she turned and walked away. Now, I'm a secularist. I'm an atheist. Sacred's a beautiful word. And for me, it means anything that preserves human dignity, that elevates, preserves human dignity. Any sacred task, sacred information is information or work that does that vital job, right? And so I asked myself, did I come back from the brink, right? I was allowed to go to the brink and look over the edge and come back. Did I come back with any sacred information, meaning information that would help people face their lives, their mortality with more love, more courage, more dignity? Or not? Did I or not? So that was the sense I made as an atheist of her use of that beautiful word, sacred, right? My wife comes in, and I mean, that was the genesis of the book. Not at that moment, but eventually I was like, okay, now I know what my assignment is. Right? Did I come back with any sacred information from this trip to the edge? Right? So my wife comes in, I say, immediately tell her I saw my dead father, and there was a pit. And so it allows me to trust a little bit more the fact that that was a real memory. Whether it was a real phenomenon or not, that's a different matter. But it was a real memory, right? I didn't just sort of cook this up. So in my inquiry, I came back, and I was pretty feeble for a while. You have half your blood in your abdomen. You're pretty messed up for a while, right? It's called a hematoma, and it does not feel good. And I had 10 people's blood in me, right? And so I started reading about NDEs, near-death experiences, because that's what I had. And I found out that one of the most common is that a dead loved one arrives to escort you across, just like my father did, right? And another weird component of this, I'll say it very quickly, is that one night before, now we co-sleep, and I was in the same, big pad on the floor, all 4 people in the family, like on a big lovely pile, right? That's how we sleep. And so one night before this happened, I had the worst dream I can ever imagine having, which was that I was hovering above my family and they were crying and I was calling out to them and they couldn't hear me and they couldn't see me. And I was made to understand that they couldn't see me or hear me because I was dead. I was a spirit. And I was outbound into the void. And there was no going back, and that was it. And I was so bereft, I was so anguished that I woke myself up, and suddenly I'm in this bed with my family, and it's dawn. It's early dawn. Oh, thank God, because I thought it was real, right? I thought that was actually happening. 24 hours later, that was happening.
That's enough for most people, right?
Right.
That happening, your father,
Yeah.
that it has a transformational
Well, right.
effect in how you view the afterlife and how you view faith and things like that.
Well, right. And so, and it did for me in some ways, right? Except I'm also a skeptic. And I don't want a story. I want an explanation, right? And there's
If it's a good story, that's also helpful.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, and religion is a story. It's a beautiful story, right? And we know, but you're in the world of explanations because you can test explanations. You don't want to test stories because you embarrass them, right? Don't test the story of Santa Claus. You'll embarrass it, right? But you have to test the explanations. Airplanes fly because there's something called an airfoil and there's enough thrust to make the thing lift off the ground, right? It's an explanation. You don't need a story about airplanes flying. God keeps it aloft. No one would fly that airline, right? So I wanted an explanation for what I saw, not a story about what I saw, right? And so I started reading about NDEs. And one of the most common is that you're hovering above your family on your way out. I had that dream, right? And then a loved one appears to escort you across. That happened too. And I was seized by this fear that maybe I had died in my sleep and that everything afterwards, that my dream was actually my experience of dying. And that everything afterwards was a dying hallucination and I still don't know it.
including right now.
Including right now. No idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
The fact that this show exists might make you think that I'm probably dead. How the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I really, and it was just it was effective trauma. I mean, trauma has a lot of complicated effects on your mind. And one of the things that was going on is I did something called derealization. I started to doubt everything. I started to doubt reality. And one of the consequences of trauma, right?
How long after is this?
Within days, a couple of weeks. I'm like,
But and how long does that doubting everything last?
Michael's asking
No,
for a
because
friend.
it's like literally been 51 years for me.
Just informed us
Trying
that
to-
this show isn't really happening.
No. I'm just trying to fuck with him now. Just
I was, I stopped literally thinking that I didn't exist, but it continued on as a just crushing kind of anxiety and depression.
yeah.
And so I stopped the literal worry. Like that lasted maybe a month, and then it continued on
Into the depression. And
it's just
anxiety.
unbelievable depression.
Can I ask for our listeners and viewers, because they often, I've gotten emails. I talk about depression quite a bit, and as a practical response to these things, like what does one do rather than just gobs full of SSRIs and stuff. When this stuff hit you, what did you do? What was the reaction for you, and what was the treatment for you? Just to kind of muscle through it.
Well, I was incredibly anxious, so I couldn't be alone.
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere by myself. I mean, I really was in a state, right? And incredibly anxious. And then that finally eased up after about a year. Took about a year. And I thought, I'm out of the woods. And then I started to get incredibly depressed.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that that's what followed. And suddenly I remember it's like, all the soldiers I know, like that's it. That's the depression. I never understood it. Like, I understand you're anxious. I understand you jump at loud noises, blah, blah, blah. Depressed? Why? Right. It started to happen to me. I couldn't believe it. And I was dangerously depressed. And my wife made me go to a shrink, right? Now, she saved me twice now. She told the ambulance drivers who didn't want to take me to the hospital, they were like, he's fine. He probably just dehydrated. It's a hot day. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. My wife is like, no, he's going to the hospital.
Well, you also stood up again and collapsed, right?
And right. But that's
maybe.
and then she sort of did it again. She said, no, you have to go talk to someone. And the reason was because the poor woman, right? So now I'm reading about NDEs and I'm starting to doubt that I actually survived, right? Oh my God, I'm not here. I'm not really here. And so I at one point I went up to her, my wife, and I said, I sort of grabbed her by the shoulders. I was like, Can you just tell me I'm really here? Like no wife, no spouse wants to hear this, right? Just tell me I'm really here. Right?
And by the way, you're still married, so what a saint this woman is.
And she said, yes, sweetheart, you're And in my mind, I'm like, that's just the kind
She
of
has
thing.
to say that. She has to say that.
Hallucination.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew you. Right? I'm on to you. Right. So she asked this amazing question. She said, Sebastian, do you feel lucky or unlucky that this happened to you? And I couldn't.
question.
Very good question.
I couldn't
Good
answer it. In some ways, I felt very special. Like, oh my God, I got to go look over the edge of the infinite Grand Canyon and come back alive. Like, special me. And the other part of me felt really unlucky because I'd ruined everything. Right? I didn't trust anything, and so I couldn't answer the question. And it took about a year, and I finally reframed it in sort of more mythic terms. I was like, she was asking, was I blessed or cursed? Mm-hmm. So often when I'm at a journalistic dead end, I just look up the etymology of the words associated with my inquiry. Mm-hmm. And no one actually knows where the word cursed comes from, which is interesting. But they know where the word blessing comes from. Mm-hmm. And it comes from the Anglo-Saxon word bletzian, which means blood. And the idea is that there is no blessing without the shedding of blood. That the shedding of blood is what makes something sacred, is what blesses it. I mean, that's why battlefields are sacred. Childbirth is sacred. I think it dates to the pre-Christian animal sacrifices in Europe, right? I mean, the killing of the lamb was what made that moment and that altar and that place sacred. And so all of a sudden I realized, like, great question, except it's both. It's always both. You are always blessed and cursed. Life is a blessing and a curse. Everything is a blessing and a curse. And so I don't have to wrestle with why me, right? Mm-hmm. And that somehow released me, and some pretty good psychotherapy.
But the psychotherapy helped.
Oh yeah.
Like it really did.
It really did.
And you were doing this once a week, a couple times a week.
Yeah, once a week.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. I know a guy. He was in battle, like me.
You've mentioned your skepticism a few times. You've mentioned your atheism a few times. But in the book, I'm also reading about your father's perspective and the notion of these kind of us all being part of these waves, our consciousness. And we'll talk about consciousness specifically, I hope, like returning to some vast ocean of consciousness of which we are all a part. Like that sounds kind of spiritual in a very profound way.
Well, okay, so yeah, and I didn't fully answer your question. It was a roundabout, but I'll get to it because it's the
we're doing the
same
weave
question.
It's
yeah,
fine.
right. So
I love that's the weave. Great weave.
So I started researching NDEs, and I'm a skeptic. I'm a rationalist, right? So was my father. And, the doctors, the neurologists are like, listen, people see a bright light. They seem to float above their body, they have out-of-body experience. They have a life review. We can produce all of this in the laboratory. Like the dying brain is, in extremis, and a lot of intense stuff's happening to it. Mm-hmm. And if you push a probe into someone's brain, you can trigger epileptic fits. You can trigger a white light. You put a fighter pilot in a human centrifuge and give them 5Gs. They will have an out of body experience. Like we know how this works. It's all neurology, right? And I bought all. I was like, yeah. Absolutely. I was like, oh, well, no afterlife. But on the other hand, it's nice to have one's skepticism and rationality confirmed once again, even though your dead father floated above you at a weird moment, right? Like,
who's the dead physicist floating above me?
Yeah. The only thing that didn't make sense to me was, like, if you give a room full of people LSD, they will all hallucinate. We know that, right? There's no mystery there. The neurology is well known. They will not all hallucinate the same thing. And what I don't understand, the skeptic in me, the skeptic that is skeptical of skepticism, right? I do not understand why the dying basically all hallucinate basically the same thing. The dead show up to help the dying. And I don't understand the neurology. I understand the neurology of hallucination, but not of hallucination content. I do not understand it.
I mean, is that because we all kind of know that that's what people think? No?
No. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea I was dying, and I wasn't glad to see him, right? I mean, it's just like, I mean, there are people who have seen a dead person that they didn't know had died because the person had died the day before.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, very, very strange things, right? And so I was, oh God, what's his name? I was on a podcast. The guy's,
sorry.
So horrible. Yeah.
Describe him.
He's like a sort of famous rationalist, right? He's a skeptic.
Michael
Shermer.
Shermer.
Yes,
Yeah.
Michael Shermer. Yeah, very yes. So
funny.
what he offered was, and it was a great conversation. He's a smart guy. I
Michael's great. Yeah,
really
sure.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
God of the gaps.
but-
he said God of the gaps.
But
God of the gaps?
Oh yeah, it's a whole like philosophical thing, like where you see wherever there is a gap in human understanding, you put God there.
put God-
That. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right. So what he said was, he said, look, obviously evolution developed this way to ease our pain when we're dying, right? And that's what's going on. It's a Darwinian process that produced these comforting illusions at our worst moments, which sounds like it makes sense, except it makes absolutely no sense, right? The way evolution works, the way natural selection works, is it helps you either survive or procreate. There is no survival in those situations we're talking about. There's certainly no procreation. How would those changes to your neurology be advantaged in the next generation, right? That's the way it works. You have a variation in your genetics that gives you an adaptive advantage either for survival or procreation, and those genes are overrepresented in the next generation, right? Mm-hmm. That's by definition impossible if you're talking about comforting hallucinations when you're dying, right? And if anything, it makes it easier to die, which is the opposite of evolution. So all due respect, but he was not making sense there, right? And so where I turned, instead of turning to God or spirituality, which for me, it's kind of a sweet word, but it doesn't really mean anything, right? Like, I don't quite know what it means. Like it's either a story or an explanation. Spirituality seems to be like it's in the middle, like it's like sort of both. And it's not a useful word for me. Is there an explanation for what I saw that's not neurological, that could be actually involved in the fabric of the universe? In other words, do we not understand reality so profoundly that the boundary between life and death actually isn't a boundary, that the boundary between my consciousness and your consciousness and my father's consciousness actually isn't a boundary? It's all connected. And I looked at quantum physics, and one of the very, very strange, mysterious, and profound things about quantum physics is that the impossible happens. A particle can be in two places at the same time, right? Particles can communicate with each other instantaneously, which is faster than the speed of light, instantaneously across the universe.
And nothing is supposed to be doing things faster than the speed of light.
Exactly. Yeah. And things should not be in the same place at the same time, right? And I cannot walk through two doorways simultaneously, right? But at the quantum level, a particle can do exactly that. And so one of the theories, this isn't my theory, but it's out there among the physicists, it's called biocentrism. Is it possible that the mysteries of the quantum world that we do not understand, we can show that we can demonstrate that they exist, but we can't explain them? They're a total contradiction of the logic, the functioning of the macroscopic world that we live in. Is it possible that the crucial, so what they know from quantum physics is that if you do something to a particle and don't observe it, it will act in one way, and if you observe it, if there's a conscious observer, it will act differently. It's crazy, right? Yeah. So one of the theories is maybe consciousness, because there's a conscious brain observing the universe, creates the universe that it's observing. Mm-hmm. It creates the reality that it's observing. And that might be because consciousness is as much part of the actual physical universe as, say, gravity, which is an invisible force that makes absolutely no sense. We take for granted that the cup is sitting on the table. Why should the cup sit on the table? And you can't tell me. I can't tell you. Like we know. But there it is. It's this force that suffuses the universe. Without it, there would be no universe. Nothing would exist without gravity. Likewise with consciousness. And so that when you die, you may be crossing over into this grand unity, this colossus that is universal consciousness. And none other than Schrödinger, one of the grandfathers of quantum physics, believed that, right? He was like,
sure,
that is the nature of the universe, and we just don't understand it yet.
But you're thinking about Schrödinger's cat in all of these, I mean, obviously informed by your father's profession and where is there a point there where you say, because you're on this big exploration of all these ideas because you almost died, that you say, I'm going to walk into a church, I'm going to walk into a synagogue, I'm going to read those books and the people who believe in that stuff and give that a fair shake. Because imagine if you're walking around saying, is this real? Am I actually alive? Then religion at that point doesn't seem that fantastical to me, right? So did you actually do that exploration or have those moments that were falsified for you in some way and you moved away from it? Or did you just say, you know what, that's just not who I am?
For the purposes of understanding what happened to me, I wanted an explanation.
Yeah.
And I knew I wasn't going to get that in a church. I was going to get a story.
What is? Can you just bridge the gap between story and explanation? Is it mainly that there's some mechanism, some?
A story is there to make you feel better.
Oh, there's no
But
science.
what is the explanation? How
an
does an explanation?
explanation can
Because
be
an explanation is a kind of a story.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's a
Help me
theory that
understand.
can be tested.
Okay.
And
Right? You can
replicate.
test it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? And so when someone says, well, God exists, I feel that God exists. Well, okay, that's fine. That's lovely for you, right? But unless you give me some evidence, much less proof, right? But at least a little evidence that God exists, it's a story for me.
You
And
ever
it's
seen how a leek is made?
a like the
The
vegetable?
leek, just the vegetable.
Oh.
Like
Oh, what are you, Ben Stein, all of a sudden?
God is in the leek.
Yeah.
No, I'm
That's
thinking
my
about-
stoned idea.
That was,
Nice.
that was your stone, that was your stone Ben Stein idea.
like popular current notions like multiverse theory, for example. I don't know that there could ever be any tangible evidence to support that. I suppose that would count as a story.
Until they prove it. Yeah, until they have evidence for it.
Although we
yeah.
don't really know how they could prove it.
Absolutely.
Actually, it's calling to mind something that you wrote about physics. And it's actually, I remember it's in parentheses, something along the lines of their physicists generally appreciate that there's essentially a limit to what they can do with their work. And I think this is in a section of the book where you're describing the difficulty of rearing children with religion, or at least one of the challenges of rearing children with religion, that they'll have these questions for which you don't have answers.
Yeah.
I think that's correct, right?
Yeah, that's right. You raise children without religion, they'll ask you questions you can't answer. Correct. Right.
Also with religion.
But that was my takeaway, actually.
not very bright.
That while physicists may generally have this appreciation for the limits of their domain, most people who are secular don't actually have those same sort of tools available to them. And I'm always struck by the number of people who are thoroughgoing skeptics, who are secular, who believe in the Big Bang and stuff, but who don't appreciate just how durable the mystery of consciousness and the mystery of being more fundamentally are. That it's one thing to say that there's a singularity and everything came from nothing, but we're also talking about the laws of the universe as well. And the fact that there happen to be laws that make everything orderly is profoundly mysterious and perhaps irresolvably mysterious. At some point, does the explanation not become kind of a story, or I suppose that's where the boundary line is?
That's where the boundary is, right? So yeah, we may never answer it. I'm guessing we never will answer some of those most profound questions. And where religion and physics converge, they both say the same thing. Religion says, okay, here we are, and we're here because poof, out of nowhere, God was created, and God created the universe, and now here we are, right? Physicists say, listen, we understand the laws of physics, we can test for them, we can prove some of them, we know exactly how gravity works, we know blah, 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 all the parameters that allow for material existence, biological life, and conscious life. We can explain all of it. What we can't explain, like with religion, is how the universe got started. So religion is saying God came out of nowhere and suddenly existed. And the physicists are saying the universe came out of nowhere and suddenly existed, and we can't tell you how. The difference is that the physicists will acknowledge that. They'll say, listen, we just don't know.
But they do say things, there is no God. And I will hear many thoughtful people, like I did an event with Richard Dawkins maybe a year ago now, actually. I think it was last November. And we talked about just the kind of strangeness of being and all this other stuff. And he various times said something I hear all the time, that, it's ultimately the universe, it's meaningless. It doesn't matter. In fact, this notion that you die, you just kind of return to the void and it's nothing. maybe. It feels like there's an actual leap there. There is a regular pattern of people going beyond what the science can actually tell us and making these concrete assertions. And as compared to religious belief, which while the dogma itself might be these kind of traditions that you don't want to scrutinize too carefully, there's something about the systems of belief that are actually proven to help people live fuller lives, to deal with the discomfort of being.
Yeah, I mean, stories are very helpful.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful, right? And so I'm not discounting the utility of a good story, and religion's an amazing story. Often an amazing story, not always.
Some
right?
of them. Yeah, and one could be better than another. But I suppose I'm contrasting it with the materialist consensus, which also leaves you with this notion that it's ultimately meaningless.
Well, we don't know. So it's just as absurd to claim to know there is no God as to claim to know there is a God. Just as absurd, right? And one must refrain, in my opinion, from doing either. If you need to claim that there's a God in order to live a psychologically stable and emotionally fulfilling life, go for it, right? But atheist, for me, I say I'm an atheist, and it doesn't mean that I'm claiming to know there's no God. It just means I myself don't believe in God. I just don't. And belief is unbidden, right? It's like falling in love.
Right.
You can't instruct yourself to fall in love with Betty. Like you're either in love with Betty or you're not. And you either believe in God or you don't. But the idea that it's a decision, is ridiculous. So a belief in God has not welled up inside me, right? And if it ever does, I'll be puzzled and maybe thrilled. I don't know. But it would help to have him show himself, right? I mean, do I have to do all the work here? You know what I mean?
I am seeing the God in the gaps of this book.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Really?
I'm dead serious. I'm still 17 pages away from the end. I will candidly admit, but it's around there, these questions. I wanted just to read a single sentence in here.
Yeah.
This is the one that made me choke up. And it relates to your asking your poor wife who deserves a medal, whether you actually exist or whether this is
because of his health or just because of him. What are you saying? He deserves a medal? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He's very difficult, apparently.
Right.
Read
Argumentative, the works. Yeah.
Have you read his work? Okay.
Stop telling me stories. I need facts. Yeah.
This is about your father, who's kind of the hero of the piece in my reading, although your mom is the moral center. He didn't believe in anything as simple-minded as heaven or as extravagant as reincarnation, but he also never looked up at the stars, Camille, because he said he found the immensity overwhelming.
Yeah.
Moynihan is the first person I ever heard express that sentiment.
I feel that all the time. Yeah.
And I'll say, and I'm an atheist and will always be an atheist, I think. But after I had children, I finally understood the need for the idea of heaven. What happens if something happens to your child?
Yeah.
Where do they go?
Yeah.
It's psychologically unbearable that you won't be reunited with them, that they're going into the void. They have to go to heaven. And thank God that hasn't happened to me. But I understand the human need for heaven not to be, I need someplace nice to go, right? No, it's God forbid if something happens to my child, they die of a fever at age 2, at age 3, at age 10.
Yeah.
Where are they? There has to be a heaven that they go to.
I mean, even in any of my fears of death that cripple me, I think about it way too much. And
the indicators are not positive.
I mean, I also am just pushing it closer every day by my behavior.
Turns out.
But it is mostly because of my daughter. It's not about me. I could give a shit. I feel like, what is it going to do psychologically to her? And that's the time that I'm like, maybe when we were in Italy this summer and she went to churches and she was like, this is the most beautiful thing. And I'm like, maybe you'll be overwhelmed by Catholicism, which I don't believe in.
But she'll turn into Candace Owens.
That's probably, that's the other problem is that, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And hopefully those stories, you can tell them, because when I slide or dive off this mortal coil, that it might be an easier thing for you to handle, because I know that she's fearful of this stuff. She's expressed it to me when she was young and expressed it to me when she's not, I mean, she's 14 now, not that young. But yeah, that's what I'm not concerned about myself. I'm concerned about her. And that's why I love the idea of religion for other people. Because I'm exactly where you are, sort of, I didn't become friends with Hitchens for no reason at all. Although Christopher and I never talked about religion. We just didn't do it. It was not what our common interests were. But I do feel that same sort of thing, and I wish I didn't. But for my daughter, I hope that she does, just so she can handle bad news, basically.
I wonder if there is a disposition that I know most people who perhaps didn't grow up in the church have, and who are skeptical of religion have, that says that religion is kind of simplistic, like these simple narratives about how the world works and what God is like. And I think it's true that lots of people practice a kind of convenience store, fast food religious belief. It's also the case that you have people like David Bentley Hart, who is this really thoughtful theologian who writes these grand books and is, a capable wordsmith, who has reintroduced me to people like Origen, these church fathers who had these really extraordinary, sophisticated ideas. There are guys like, I think his name is it Berkeley, who was an idealist, who similarly kind of thought a great deal about the nature of the world and being and consciousness in particular. And one can have a really rich religious belief that is sincere and deep and thoroughgoing, that is rigorous, and is not at all just a matter of kind of convenient choice because it makes me feel good, but because I've thought about this. I've thought about this a lot. And I can't shake the sensibility that there is a medium of being and that it's shared, that they take, Einstein talked about Spinoza's God, they believe in it, and they perhaps believe in it a little more rigorously than Einstein did. I think when he invoked it, it was more figurative. Right. But I certainly know people. And at times I wonder if I'm not that guy myself.
There's no reason to try to shake that belief. It works for people. It's pro-social. It coheres society. It coheres groups. It fosters human connection. It does a lot of good things. It just, in my opinion, doesn't describe very well the observable physical universe. That's it. That's all I'm saying. But the human phenomenon of religion,
that's true. Yeah.
What I was after when I was researching this book was what the fuck happened to me?
Right.
What did I see?
Right. Yeah.
Did I see a hallucination?
Yeah.
Or is there something about reality we're not understanding, and in some sense that actually was my father? I mean, not my father in the flesh and blood, but in some other level, some quantum level that we just don't understand. And that's what I was after. Listen, one of the most profound experiences I've ever had was in a church, right? I was in a church and I did this strange project. Me and a couple of buddies from combat, 3 other guys, we were sort of vagrants off and on for a year. We called it high-speed vagrancy. We walked along the railroad lines, we didn't jump
Dude,
freight.
Your life is weird.
Yeah,
it is weird.
I'm just going to say that out loud.
We walked along the railroad lines from D.C. to Philly to Pittsburgh, right? We walked through the factories and ghettos and suburbs and wilderness and farms and everything. We were sleeping under. You didn't even have a tent. We were sleeping under, under bridges and cooking
Worst
over.
reboot of Stand By Me I've ever heard.
Is this what you were describing in Tribes? A tribe at the beginning of that book? You're on the road and
No, I was a kid.
That's
I was
different.
just
Okay.
hitchhiking. Yeah. So we walked 400 miles off and on for a year through the winter, through the summer, everything. Basically, the cops were sort of occasionally looking for us, so we had to hide from the cops, and we were all combat experience. We knew how to handle ourselves, right? And so we just walked along the railroad lines with these swaths of no man's land, right? And that crisscrossed the country. And so we did this extraordinary trip, and now I totally forgot why I'm telling you this.
I love it. Because someone called the police and said, I think Timothy McVeigh is in my backyard. There's 3 fucking jarheads tweaking outside.
I just blinked out. Oh my God, it'll come back. Sorry about that. Anyway, it was interesting.
Church.
Oh yeah. So yes, thank you.
Church, yeah.
So whenever we were in town on a Sunday, we would go to church, right? We were a bunch of non-believers, right? And we were walking through Baltimore, and we went to this just incredible church in the sort of ghetto of Baltimore, northeastern Baltimore.
That's called Baltimore, by the way.
Come on now.
No, I know your father came through Baltimore, but he had the presence of mind to leave, but go ahead.
Right. And the sermon was extraordinary. The music was extraordinary. The people, oh my God. I was like, boy, if I'd lived anywhere near this place, I would be here every Sunday. There was absolutely no requirement to believe in God in order to fully enjoy the human experience of church. I'm in. Like I literally would have gone to church every day.
Man.
Yeah. Right,
Depends
exactly.
on the church, but yeah.
That's the church. Well, this church, and so the idea, the belief in God, and the practice of church, the practice of religion, the practice of a sort of religiously based kindness towards others, has nothing to do with God. I mean, you can connect it to God, but you don't have to. It can come out of your own heart, right? You don't need God in order to feel those feelings that church will give you.
Camille just mentioned it. Your 2016 book. Give a kind of précis of what it's like. Tribe. I mean, you talk about how religion is good as a sort of unit of social cohesion and things like that. Talk just briefly about the purpose of that book and the premise of that book, which I think our audience would definitely be interested in.
So in Afghanistan, I was at a remote outpost called Restrepo. Okay, it was a 30-man position.
Yeah.
On this ridge, we were in combat almost every day. There was no internet. There was no communication with the outside world. For the first 3 months, there was no electricity. The guys, we slept in the dirt, shoulder to shoulder, behind sandbags, and woke up and you got shot at, right? And the guys were out there. It was all men. It was 2nd Platoon Battle Company, the 173rd Airborne. They ate MREs, which are these just ghastly meals in a plastic bag, right? MREs for 15 straight months, right? They were out there for 15 months. And I was out there for quite a lot of it with them. And I made a film called Restrepo. And after it was all over, there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of whatever. It was complicated coming home, right? But after it was all over, one by one, the guy, and I got very close to these guys. I'm still close to many of them. They said, the strangest thing, Sebastian, we all miss it. We want to go back there, right? And so in my mind, I'm like, wow. That war really damaged you, didn't it? Because that place sucked. And now you want to go back there. Like,
and they hated it in the moment too, right? No one was saying, I love this. Well, it's happening.
No, they liked combat a lot, right? And they had a good time out there in a lot of different ways. But they missed their girlfriends. They missed women in general. They missed cars. They missed televisions. They missed food. They missed shower. With how long is the list of things they missed, right? And but they wanted to go back. And suddenly I remembered I had a sort of surrogate uncle who was Native American. Very fortunate to meet this guy. And I was like 18 when I met him, and he was a part of my life, until he died, 15 years later. And his name was Ellis. And I remember him saying to me, he grew up out west. I think he was Sioux and Apache. And I remember him saying to me, Sebastian, all throughout the history of this, and this was his language. So all throughout the history of this country, Sebastian, the white people were always running off to join us Indians. And us Indians, we never ran off to join the white people. And I was like, Ellis, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was just maybe a story, right? So then I did some research. I was like, wow, it was true. Like Benjamin Franklin, all these people of the day were really concerned. Like, how is it that this heathen society is attractive to good Christians? Right? And not the other way around. We have, the wagon, we have the stove, we have the this, the that. How can the savages, as they called them, not want to be part of us? And it made me think of the guys wanting to go back to Restrepo. And I realized, as a former anthropologist, everyone wants to be part of a cohesive group. That's wired into our DNA. Talk about adaptive, right? Talk about evolution. It's wired into our DNA. We are social primates. And if you're not part of a close group, you're going to die. You do not survive by yourself in nature. You will die, right? Our survival comes from being part of a group. And the way evolution reinforces adaptive behaviors is to make them feel good, right? Eating food when you're hungry feels good. That's how Darwin got humans to do it, right? Sex feels good, that, et cetera, right? So being in a close group in adverse circumstances feels good. And that's adaptive. So what I realized is that modern society, this is what tribe's about. Modern society has become so affluent, so safe, so mechanized, so technology heavy that it allows people, it gives them the opportunity to live lives that are almost completely independent of any small group, any meaningful group, which is
terrible.
Right. I mean, it's a blessing in many ways, but it's also in human terms a great, great loss. And then when you collapse society, What happens? The Blitz in London, right? People are sleeping shoulder to shoulder in the tube stations. It was basically Restrepo, right? The British authorities were worried that there would be mass psychiatric casualties during the German bombings of London. What happened was when the bombing started, admissions to psych wards went down because, as they said, all the chronic neurotics of peacetime suddenly had an important job, right? They were running through the rubble, pulling people out of the rubble. They were driving ambulances. And so what I realized is like we need to be needed by a group. And if we're not, we're at risk of depression, anxiety, suicide, everything else. So and I'll end with this. Ironically, people miss some of the worst times in their life. The blackout, the hurricane, the Blitz of London, the siege of Sarajevo. Outside Sarajevo, there's a graffiti that says things were better when they were bad, talking about the siege.
My God.
The suicide, depression, the rates are much higher in affluent society than in poor society, right? I mean, they've done studies of this. The World Health Organization actually did a global study of depression and suicide, and what they found was a correlation of those two things, not with poverty, but with affluence. And I believe that it's because of the individual isolated lives that affluence permits.
There has to be some very negative aspects of the tribe too, right? I mean, when the number of people who are in Poland or in what used to be East Germany, who have these ideas that, oh, I miss those days, as you were just saying, they're not days to be missed. I mean, they're driving nice cars that don't break down on the side of the road with their two-stroke engines. And then tribalism can be a very, very dangerous idea that we are part of a tribe, whether it's Hutus and Tutsis, or the obsession with identity in this country, which I think was like quite splintering for the social fabric.
Yeah, I mean, lots of very, very powerful human desires and preferences and tastes can. Sorry, I'm just getting over my children's cold. There's lots of things that are very important in terms of evolution, very powerful forces in human life that can be very dangerous. For example, the sex drive, horribly misused, right? Aggression keeps us safe. Mm-hmm. It also is a terrible thing, right? So if someone breaks in your home at 3 a.m. and you don't have the capacity for aggression, your family might be dead, right? It's an adaptive thing. That doesn't mean that there is no toxic expression of aggression or sexuality or tribalism.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. In modern society,
it can be,
yes, but that.
And by the way, my sexuality is incredibly toxic. I just want to acknowledge this now.
The audience
send
knows,
me an email.
I guess Sebastian.
I understand my toxicity. I'm not going to respond.
But we're talking about a human norm, and the human norm is that you live in close proximity and interdependence with a finite group of people that you more or less know, even whether you like them or not depends. But you know them, you trust them. And as one of the guys in the platoon said, he said, Sebastian, it's amazing. There's guys in this platoon who straight up hate each other, but we would all die for each other. Right? That was the human norm for 200,000 years. And then suddenly it wasn't. Of course we're sad. Of course we're anxious. Of course we feel unfulfilled. We don't have that kind of relationship with virtually anyone that we know that we don't share blood with.
And that little, I think that gets back to kind of some of your strange career choices, like life choices. But like,
by the way, who's the most successful person at this table?
No, I mean,
it ain't me, babe.
He sets up a couple of points in here. It's like this: the road taken, the road not taken, and he's like, "I was a kind of a pussy." He doesn't say that. I'm saying that
he will
him.
literally crush you right after.
I know.
Go ahead.
But I didn't.
If he stops coughing, he will rip your fucking head off.
I didn't do this totally insane thing. I just did this half insane thing. I left part of me behind over here. But like you did a lot of pulse quickenings in your life. And part of that is kind of to replicate some of those like ancient senses, I think, as part of that. I wanted to make sure I asked you one question about the same quote I read about your dad being scared of the looking up at the heavens, because it's related to your own kind of like being worried about stuff. And it's related most importantly to why I don't take drugs, which is like, I like the wall. The wall's right there.
By the way, can I just interject something?
Yeah.
Don't take those drugs. Like, don't take the ones that make you think the wall's melting. Take the ones that make you like a little
Run
you
into
know.
the wall.
I mean, he's
Yeah, right.
doing
You
it now.
run through the wall.
He's doing it now.
Or
It's
that
too
will
late.
blow up the boat that you're on from
It's
Venezuela.
Too late
you're full
to
of.
start cocaine.
No,
That's
it's fine.
And Thor.
It's never too late.
Thor Halvorson told me that I'm supporting Maduro if I do that. And I don't want to do that
If
because
you can
Thor
source-
never.
I have
has
ethically
taken-
sourced cocaine.
Yeah, ethical cocaine. No, like the idea that part of this, what makes it so moving is that you're sort of talking about those electrons that are simultaneously in two different places, that it's inexplicable, and that maybe what we understand about consciousness in the universe is kind of inexplicable. So how about like being all right with that?
And certainly in its infancy. So yeah.
And in its infancy. This is kind of why I stopped taking drugs, which I never really started, is that like it went straight to like, oh yeah, that wall on reality, that sort of predictability around you, nah.
right. Yeah.
Nah, you just like reach right through
Yeah.
and get your dad. And I didn't even know your dad, so it would have been like
Right.
super awkward. But like it's not comfortable, is it? To imagine that it's on some level really liberating. It's very beautiful. There's something about like like you talk a lot about how people have this sense of expansiveness in these near-death experiences, like when they feel like at great like elevation and peace, and just like it's wonderful actually, which is not exactly what you experience yourself, but like it's a common thing. But also kind of like the world in this sort of narrow parameter. I mastered it, I think, enough, and I'm a little bit worried about like that wall's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, to function as a species, as an individual, the world needs some continuity that we can count on. So, like challenging that through drugs, it makes the survival task harder, but it does something that's quite important, which is it gives humans at least the illusion, if not maybe some actual insight into the nature of existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that not terrify you? Because you expressed terror, as
Yeah.
part of this.
Well,
Like you've lost faith in the reality of the situation.
Yeah. I mean, what I realized was that terror and reverence are two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Wow.
And if you're not sufficiently terrified, you're not getting it. You're not getting how fragile, how miraculous this life is. And if you're not sufficiently reverent, you're not likewise. You don't realize how lucky you are. Like, I mean, and you can't be reverent without the terror, and you can't be terrified without reverence. I mean, to me, they're like totally intertwined. And so, do you want to blow your mind and see the true nature of existence? Well, maybe not this morning. I got some stuff to do. but as a general endeavor in one's life, like, listen, we're all going to die. We're going to find out, right? And if the shamans and the seekers and the seers can get a glimpse of the actual essence of existence while we're still alive to make use of it, that might not be such a bad idea. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but that's what shamans are for, right? That's what the prophets and the seekers and the seers, that's what they're for. They're people who have designated themselves as someone who will go beyond to check it out, right? And that was what, when this nurse said to me, think about it as something sacred. I mean, I don't know what she meant, but the meaning I took from what she said was something along those lines. You went ahead of all of us and you saw something and you came back. What do you have to say? Because we're all going there.
And it's this.
Yeah. There's
Does it become less sacred if she has a Boston accent? By the way,
That was tough for me.
it's really tough.
That was tough.
attractive,
Yeah.
attractive
Yeah.
issue.
By the way, I just want you to know that there's a mass whole thing. That was tough because she's like, Sebastian, it's fucking sacred,
it's
dude.
freaking sacred.
I swear to God.
Yeah.
Fucking Wade Boggs said in 1986. You're like, geez, this was amazing for a minute.
Right.
I know we have to get out of here soon. I
Like
want
now?
to. Yeah, I know. I want to impose on you just a little bit more. Probably because of what you said, Matt. No, it'll be a little bit more. It's not a lot. I do think what I was inching towards before, when I was talking about the kind of dominant secular perspective, like enlightened people who insist like there's no meaning. There's something about, like, Carl Sagan wrote this great book, The Demon Haunted World, which I've read multiple times and has greatly enriched my life. I also wonder if there isn't a kind of overcorrection that happens where everything becomes kind of just stale, sanitized. And I do think that there's something about re-enchanting the world that we actually live in every day, and doing that absent any kind of superstitious nonsense. Like to simply acknowledge the statistical improbability of our existence in the cosmos, the strangeness of having all of these cosmic variables that actually amount to stars being able to form. Like, there's something about it that is just potently mysterious in this way that if you lean in and are paying attention, I think it makes it really hard to even have those bad days not be just a little bit brighter. So I think that there is something to, I'm not necessarily saying you need to take the LSD or anything like that, but you might want to. There's something,
Real drug user.
I've never tried LSD.
Yeah.
Pretty clear.
You get mad when I
I'm
say
actually
the blacks,
interested
but somehow the LSD is okay. All right.
I'm just saying there's something about the mystery that merits our consideration. And I think in a world where we imagine we've explained all of the hard things already, like that is disadvantageous. I think that is as harmful as essentially being completely tribeless, not having any sort of connection to other people. I do want to commend Tribe to People as much as all of the other works that we've talked about today. I found it to be a really rich, interesting perspective on actually the current moment. There's something you say towards the end of the book about just the legions of people who do these really hard, difficult, dangerous jobs that our world depends upon, that are as dangerous, if not more dangerous in some instances, as serving in the military. And we thank those people for their service while ignoring these other people completely. In fact, like almost taking an effort to ignore the fact that they're there making the world that we live in possible. So I found the whole thing just incredibly rich, and just want to thank you for your work. If you have any parting thoughts, I'm very interested. One thing I'd love to have you do is just like, what is the thread through your work? What connects all of these disparate projects to one another? Why are you the guy that has to write about the perfect storm and these servicemen, and also the fear of death?
You know, I wrote The Perfect Storm because I had a dangerous job. I was a climber for tree companies. I got hurt doing it. I hit my leg with a chainsaw, tore up my leg. And it sort of woke me up to the idea that this nation depends on a lot of dangerous work, and the people that do it are often not acknowledged and rarely paid well, right? And that got me into the topic of dangerous work and commercial fishing, and that was the first book. And it was a kind of social consciousness about, hey, listen, you all put gas in your damn car. No one knows an oil worker. You all eat vegetables. No one knows a farmer. You all live in houses made of wood. No one knows a logger. All this stuff is happening. Let's stop for a moment and appreciate that, right? And so, I don't know if there's a common thread to all my work, other than I'm trying to understand life and our society a little bit better, because I think it'll help people live a little better, right? Like on just some basic level, and that kind of understanding of, look, we need community. I hate the word community, right? It's a dull word. Tribe's a much better word. We need each other. Let's put it that way. We need each other. My book after that was called Freedom, and it was, we are self-defining. We are autonomous because the bully doesn't always win. Smaller groups, smaller individuals can win a fair fight, right? And that allows humans to be autonomous and self-defining. Otherwise, the world would be made up of fascist megastates, and it's not. And then finally, my most recent book, In My Time of Dying, like, how do you live your life knowing that all will be obliterated? Like, how do you, in a meaningless universe, like, how do you bring meaning to life? And my daughter asked me that once. I'll end with this maybe. I mean, kids ask about death, right? Unfortunately, we taught my daughter to read. She's 8 years old. Big mistake.
Yeah.
But she read the title of my book, In My Time of Dying, and she said to me, Daddy, I'm worried you're going to die someday, right? And I put her on my lap and I said, listen, sweetheart. I said, of course I'm going to. And so's mama, and so is you, and so is your little sister. And like, that's just what life is, right? But you don't know when, right? So you don't have to worry about it, because the thing you do know is that you are here right now with people you love.
Yeah.
And that is the point of life, is to be here right now with people you love, whether you're going to die tomorrow or in 50 years. It doesn't matter how long from now it's going to be or how short. The point is that you're here now with people you love. And look around, sweetheart. Where are you? Right? We're together right now. It's the only thing that matters at all. And if you can live your life that way, it'll be a good life. And if you forget to live your life that way, it might not be. So don't worry about dying. There's other things you can do something about that are much more important.
Can you come talk to my daughter? Because I was like, I don't know. Let's see what happens. That was a very short response. It was not very philosophical. It was like, probably.
Well, she, and she bought this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, to my relief, she's
Sucker.
like, no, exactly. No, she was like, oh, I mean, I clearly helped her,
Yeah.
and she's a smart little bean. Like the
Yeah.
other day, we were in traffic, and we were stuck in traffic, and then the traffic started moving, and I said, oh, good, the traffic's moving. And she said, Daddy, traffic doesn't move, cars move.
Correct.
Traffic is when cars don't move. That's,
Exactly.
Right,
Wow.
right?
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Right. So she's a smart one, right? And what I said about love and being together worked for her. And I think it would work for virtually any child.
Yeah.
Right. And so that, to me, that's you want to answer the death question, that's where you go.
Yeah.
We're on our way out. This is not a question. It's a very brief comment, just so we can go out on this. Is that one of the explanations of your life, and this kind of through line that Camille asked about and Matt asked about, is that you're it didn't surprise me when I found out that Albert DeSalvo was like your carpenter.
Yeah.
It was like, that can't be true. And I was like, I'm going to take who was the Boston Strangler, by the way? Who was working
Albert
at your house
DeSalvo.
as that guinea. It's like, I know you hate our people, but he was the most
Sounds like
murderous of
Angelo
our people.
Buono to me.
Yeah.
So like it gets a
Yeah,
little bit.
that, by the way, and I guess it was when producer Jason was talking about that you were coming on the show. We were very excited about this. And I said, is it not, did I remember this correct, that he's from Belmont in Albert DeSalvo was like making the stairs and the bookshelves in between murdering people?
Yeah, he was.
That's kind of like, I think that sets the path of your life a little bit. Like, most people don't have the fucking Boston Strangler, who was played by Jack Lemmon, who played the Boston Strangler in the movie. I think it was someone like that. But that's an incredible. That was that you wrote about this and like.
Yeah, I was 6 months old, but there was a murder down.
You were not murder worthy at that point,
right?
Yeah.
No, that's right. Yeah, there was a murder down the road that was a classic Boston Strangling, and the guy, it was a black guy from Mississippi who had cleaned this lady's house that day, was convicted of the murder, died saying he didn't do it, and no one knew that Al DeSalvo was at our house that day, alone at our house down the road, and drove by this lady's house every day on the way home. And so the book is about, it's called A Death in Belmont. The book is about the possibility, I can't prove it, the possibility that DeSalvo actually killed Bessie Goldberg, a poor woman who history has forgotten, and that Roy Smith, the black guy from Mississippi, didn't kill her. Right? But really it's an examination of like, how do you know what you think you know? Like how do you determine guilt in a circumstantial case? Like how do we know anything?
And DeSalvo, who was killed by one of Whitey's guys in the Winter Hill Gang, and he died in prison in like what, 73 or something.
Yeah, he was stabbed like 108 times or something like that.
Get the job done.
It seemed very Irish, by the way. Winter Hill Gang, like they went a little too far with the stabbing of the Italian guy. But Sebastian, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. It was really
awesome.
Really
Thank you so
enjoyed
much.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We know of new methods of attack. The Trojan horse, the fifth column.